Hello and welcome to Clipping In. Thursday, the 17th of October. To winterize or to winter bike? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler to suffer the rain and sleet of outrageous forecasts, we're 10 days from the clock change, and I always think that late October change from BST to GMT marks the beginning of late autumn or even early winter on the tops. And traditionally that's always a time when you'd be ready to switch from your racing bike stroke best bike over to a more weatherproof training machine. And I suppose this video really has its roots in a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with a friend, an old cycling racing friend. And I was riding out to Haslingden to the Halo, and I was on the bright orange Super 6 Evo Cannondale. And I said, oh, a couple of weeks and I'll be switching. And that really triggered us then. We were saying, yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how the winter bike was universal at one time, but now it's not extinct, but it's certainly on the endangered list. We both remarked on riders that we know who have bikes costing £7,000, £8,000, £10,000, but they have one bike and they ride them all the year round. And that, it wouldn't have happened in the old days. I mean, going back 25 years, my best bike, if you like, cost about 2,000. So with inflation, probably about 4.5 to 5 now. Not the same outlay as what we're talking about today, but still, those bikes, they didn't exactly lead a spoiled, cosseted life. But you wouldn't take them out at winter under any conditions, really. The earliest they'd appear would be late Feb if you were tuning up for an early season race. Now, there are a number of reasons why people might have one bike all year round. I don't think it's anything to do with space, and at those prices it's nothing to do with cost. I think realistically it might be to do with bike fit, it might be to do with performance, it might be because they are wedded to using power measurements. They could be, using power measurements, and they feel they haven't been out if they don't have those kind of metrics. Everybody operates differently in that respect. But for whatever reason, if you're going to take a summer bike, a best bike, and ride it all year round, then I think rather than just get a soaking every time, rather than wear through expensive parts, I think winterizing, that's the term I'd give to it, and you're making your best bike just a little more suitable for a typical winter, at least my experience of a winter in Britain and Ireland. I'd say the first thing to change in the winterization process would be tyres. Going onto something that's slightly heavier duty, a little bit more puncture resistance, stronger sidewalls, maybe more rubber, and even a little bit of tread to cope with stray sections of winter mud and green algae. Yes, they're slower. I know I've swapped on this bike. If we look, I've gone from Continental GP 5000 to to Schwalbe Durano double defence, and I've lost about 1 kilometre an hour straight away. Very humbling. But in the long run, roadside punctures are never fun, but over autumn winter they're less fun than ever. Point 2 would be mud guards. I know some people like their ass savers and all that kind of thing, but realistically you want more than that for winter rain, because I would say, and winter is obviously going to be a very local term. Someone who lives in Eastern Europe or North America will have a very different winter experience as a cyclist to someone living around here. Our winters, it's more a case of you're going out in the rain, you're going out just after it's stopped raining, so the roads are wet, or you're going out and the forecast says rain by midday. Unavoidable. Now there's a wide range of clip-on guards that are, once you size them up, you can fit them, you can remove them in minutes. On here I've got SKS race blades. Last winter on the gravel bike I had SKS Speed Rocker, which I thought were better. The Speed Rockers covered the gap between seat stay bridge and seat tube, and they also extended beyond the front fork. So to me they were far more practical for use at winter. The race blades are okay. I stuck to this design primarily because I wasn't sure about tyre clearance on this bike. Originally when I got that Cannondale Super 6, I thought about having that as a 12-month bike, winterizing it, putting some heavier duty tyres. I mean, I was running 30mm on that at summer. I thought we'll run some 32mm gator skins, get some clip-on guards, and have that as a 12-month of the year bike. But then as the inevitable bad weather's approached, I thought differently, and instead what I've done, I've put that into hibernation, and I've got my Geos out, my Geos as opposed to the Geos that was my dad's, and I've fitted 25mm tyres, I've fitted the race blades, one or two other little tweaks to it, and I'm going to use that as in parallel with the real winter bike. This will be the winterized bike. The third point will be chain lube. Often, best bikes, summer bikes, racing bikes, you use the lightest lube for maximum efficiency. Preserve every watt. Because again, those bikes are looked after. But you'll find that many of those dry lubes and wax lubes, you look at their performance in the wet, and oftentimes they'll say that they're down to reapply at least every 100 kilometres. Well, typically on the old days, I think nothing are going out doing 130k on a Saturday, 160k on a Sunday, and that would mean that on those rides you're exceeding their reapplication point, and when you get home tired, cold and wet, you're then having to get involved with fairly complicated, fussy reapplication schedules. I think it's maybe a little unfashionable to talk about a good quality oil-based lube with Teflon or PTFE in there, but those things, they give you a lot more leeway in wet, dirty conditions. Another point, I think we're up to 4 now, aren't we? Would be think if you've got some very exotic wheels, And I've seen people riding exotic deep carbon rims at winter, but I would think, given the wear and tear, given the junction of salt, water, carbon, metals, plus seals and free hubs and so on, if it's economically possible, a pair of aluminium training wheels would make far more sense for those big outings at the foul weather time of year. And if there's absolutely no chance of switching, maybe people are using power tap hubs or whatever, and they don't want to be removed from power measurement, the next thing to do, I think, would be to split your chain, put a cassette on from a lower group set, and deliberately run a cheaper transmission for the winter months. You know, you can, your nice lightly lubed Ultegra or Dura-Race chain and cassette, take them off, clean them, mark them up in a bag, ready for spring, and fit something, you know, along the lines of 105 chain, 105 cassette, and your pocket will thank you, because they're a half or even a third or maybe a quarter of the price of the top group sets, and yet at winter you'll get the miles out of it that you need. I mean, on the question of economy, one of the reasons why I've winterized this Geos as opposed to the Super 6, this is 9-speed. 9-speed kit lasts a lot longer than 12, but also I put on a new chain and a new cassette, and it costs £30 for the pair. Now, I'd be looking at around 75 for a 12-speed chain, 12-speed cassette. So for me, it also means I can put some miles into this old workhorse Geos, because it's been bumped down the roster for summer use. It's found itself with 3 other bikes in front of it, and this year I've barely ridden it. So personally, it's going to get some miles over the next few months in conjunction with the real winter bike. I would say that my early experience of race blades and so on, it's a compromise compared to full-length fitted chromoplastic mudguards. Of course it is, but if a bike simply won't take fitted guards because of clearances or geometry, then they do a good job. I can't speak for what's happening behind when I run through deep water. If anyone was sat on the wheel, they might have a different opinion, but they're capable of keeping me quite dry. My feet still get splashed, but as far as I can see, the rear mudguard's doing a good job. Once upon a time, group rides were very strict on guards only. I know, my first British group ride, 97ish, I came on a racing bike with some Zefal Clipon Guards, and I lost count of the tellings off. Well, if you're going to come out with us again, make sure you've got proper guards. And that was on a dry day. If you're going to come out with us again. I didn't, but I made sure that I fitted full-length guards, and when I found a different group to go out with, I was already tooled up. I think another reason why the trad winter bike has fallen out of favour a little is because the indoor training options and riding options are so much more stimulating and entertaining than they used to be. Hello. You're going back 20-25 years, you had the turbo, you had a heart monitor, but you needed a program, you need to know what you were doing, and you needed a lot of focus. Whereas now it's far easier with the likes of Zwift, Ruvi and all the other online platforms to find an indoor alternative that will keep you mentally interested and physically working. Even going back to the early to middle 2000s, I stopped cycle commuting in favour of turbo training. I just found that cycle commuting was just so stressful, so many near misses, so much road rage and aggravation and aggression. I thought, I'll blow this. I don't need the miles that desperately. So I switched to other means of transport to get to and from work. And the time that I saved, I trained on the turbo. It was hassle-free, no interruptions, and I didn't regret doing that at all. So I used to predominantly, if I didn't have any days off, my outdoor mileage would be Saturday, Sunday, and then I would train on the turbo through the week rather than face all the aggro of commuting to and from major cities. Some people swear by it, but it just wasn't for me. I used to get almost shell-shocked after 4 or 5 days, 2 rides a day of that stuff. I'd find any excuse almost on a Saturday not to go out because I'm mentally exhausted with it. So each to their own. What I do think you can't simulate is things like that. So, you know, if you're not riding expressly for performance, and I'm certainly not nowadays, I don't know anything that can match that. As you can see there, a little extra that I've added to this bike is what I call a headset gaiter. I find that these kind of clip-on guards, there's a gap. I try to get my feet covered, so I've got the flap down there. Whoops, no pedaling, down there. But that left quite a gap. So I put a little bodge flap, you can see in white, but there's still a gap, and I find that you get pressurized dirty water being shot up into that fork crown area and the lower race of the headset, and it shortens the life tremendously when that is not clear spring water but something closer to oxtail soup. But I found many years ago that adding a neoprene wetsuit material gaiter like that to the lower race doesn't affect your steering, but it stops the jet of oxtail soup getting into the bearings, and they last an awful lot longer. It's astounding to think that yesterday on Wednesday it was thick fog all day. The visibility for most of the morning was down to about 10 meters. Fairly heavy steady rain, just not pleasant at all on my side of the Pennines. From what I can see, the western side was better. It stopped raining this morning around 4 AM, and now we're treated to this. Isn't it magical? It's 5 months until the start of spring, so that's a lot of cycling, but also it's far too long to be riding a bike that you don't enjoy riding, or that's uncomfortable, or that's unreliable. Some people take a delight in having, you know, a winter training bike that's just a complete clunker, a hack that's held together with zip ties and magic spells. But when you think about it, you know, you're doing your big mileage at this time of year in a traditional periodized season, so you need your training bike to be just as reliable and more durable than your racing bike. I remember when I used to go out with regular groups, there were always 1 or 2. The bikes were breaking down, they always needed 10 minutes extra at a cafe stop to stop something rubbing, and there's always something that needed a quick fix repair. I think it had got to the point where even the cable ties were held together with cable ties. I think the important thing is that the choice of a winter bike foul weather training bike, might be a better term. It's a personal thing, because it's a compromise, and therefore it will come down to you and your particular cycling requirements over the 5 months ahead. You know, I think sometimes I'd be better doing these types of videos inside. But I've always tried to keep Clipping In as an outdoor channel, so as rambling and disjointed as it may be, I'm sticking to that template, and at least you can look at some nice views in between the rambling. Right, that's all for this edition of Clipping In. I don't think we've answered Winterise or Winter Bike, but it's not been a bad 40 odd miles anyway. I'll say goodbye for now. See you very soon back out on the Yorkshire roads. Bye bye.